appreciate the opportunity to be here today, Madam Chair. If you have any questions, that's the bulk of my presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Randy Nix from LaGrange District 69. And one question, and several people had mentioned this to me. When we did our bill last year related to water supply, I know we had some things in there related to conservation, especially leak detection. Is any of the money that you're talking about designated for that, or is yours specifically for reservoirs? Where's our effort in that area?
Well, we anticipate that the monies that would be part of the FY12 appropriation relative to the water supply program would be for water supply. The conservation efforts, we currently, Georgia Fund and the federal program will work with some leak and detection efforts and closing those down. So we do have a program we could use that for. And of course, conservation is, as everybody knows, that's the key element. I mean, we can develop all the water supply we need, but we have to have the conservation efforts. So we see those working in tandem, but we don't anticipate, we could, but right now we don't anticipate that would be just a discrete element, since we do have some opportunities that currently exist for leak detection and leak repair.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Brian Thomas from Gwinnett County, District 100. Do you have any sense of how much supply $300 million buys over? I understand that nothing will be built in 4 years, but when all those projects are built.
We really, and it would really depend on what type of water supply project is, or what types of projects are initiated and completed. You know, in the past we've used, for just a reservoir, we've used the number of, for 100 million gallon a day yield, anywhere between 400 million and $1 billion project. So, you know, we would anticipate that the 300 million would be utilized for planning purposes, for design, for land, and for maybe closing gaps in certain projects, because the 300 million won't fund from one reservoir project. It wouldn't fund the whole thing for any type of significant yield. But to answer your question, no, we don't know how far that will go.
Okay, thank you.
We have number 24.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Could you tell us about the average of the size of a reservoir, acreage-wise, what you think would be the size of it?
That one I wouldn't, I don't know. I just don't know what an average size would be. They're so, you know, as the Joint Committee discussed back in December, there are options relative to expanding existing reservoirs, expanding existing lakes and utilizing those, the impoundments. So I really don't have an average type metric that I can provide.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, that's part of your task force, and the challenge to your task force is to determine
yes, ma'am. That type of metric, and also just how we're going to evaluate every project, because there are going to be a whole host of various types of projects, more so than I think than just reservoirs. I think there's going to be several different types.
And I do know this, your legislators, especially on this committee, would like to have access just to comment and such as that, and there'll be a process available to that for that as well.
Yes, ma'am. We'll run a very transparent. Our meetings will be open. We're going to try and structure it, at least in our minds, very similar to how we did the energy program, where there would be opportunities for private sector involvement, lots of comments, a very open process. So we anticipate
Thank
that.
you. And one more thing, as I've been asking the questions about private sector, I've had it defined to me more as a local government contracting with a private sector to provide the utility. As are we getting into development as well? Because that's a hot button question. So
that I would anticipate that we wouldn't, but I don't know. I think the task force will really narrow down as to what will be the state's involvement, and I think some of that will be dependent upon how DCA's funding would be utilized.
Okay.
Because that will dictate some of the state involvement in a project.
In 2008, there was a reservoir bill that we passed, in Senate Bill 342, and we had a much more in-depth reservoir bill on the House side, and a lot of that language was put in that bill. And I just remember part of the debate was if we're going to go directly towards solving the problem of potable water for human consumption, essentially some reservoirs some years are going to have grass and you're going to mow them because we're using the water to drink.
Right.
So that's still pretty much the overriding mission of your task force. Is that not true? We're after potable water as opposed to amenities.
Correct.
Because that I can probably just ask a question everybody on this committee wanted to ask. So okay, so thank you. I think it's number 15 next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Debbie Buckner, House District 130. My question is, will some of the reservoir planning funds be used to look at existing impoundments of water and reservoirs to see if they can be expanded before we build totally new ones?
Yes, they would be. And they would be available for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 18.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question goes to what kind of things are going to be looked at within your purview with the negotiations that we're having with Florida and Alabama? Is part of your plan to help with those negotiations so that they look at that as a stepping stone to solving this problem?
I think it would demonstrate, as Governor Deal said, certainly the state of Georgia's efforts to take care or deal with the issue. From GFA and the task force standpoint, the main thing we don't want to do is jeopardize or hinder those negotiations or that litigation. But so I would presume that our efforts would be beneficial in the fact that it is showing and demonstrating the state's commitment to try to remedy and address the water supply issue.
Thank you. I don't see any questions for the moment. I do have a question for you. It concerns national policy by the Corps of Engineers, and I think it's east of the Mississippi. They do not credit back to the states or to the parts of an individual state that returns water to the river, and I know that is a serious issue if we go to address any lake that's a core lake, and if you have someone returning water, it is not credited back to that state. I don't mean to put you on the spot there, but I know that is one of the Gideon knots as we try and solve this problem. If you could speak to that, or just say that's something y'all will be taking up, or
well, all I can say is that would be something that I think there's going to be I shouldn't say a host, but several large issues, I think nationally and locally, that we're going to be dealing with as we move forward with this program. And I think that, of course, the interbasin transfer issue, a whole host of things that we'll be looking at. So I think it will come up. It will be something that we'll have to figure out what is our. We know what our policy statement should probably be, but and then work with the governor's office and the legislature to figure out how do we address those, because I think there's going to be several things that come up out of this as to make efficient and effective use of any water supply project projects that we do.
I know that probably continue with negotiations with Florida and Alabama, using the court system by way of challenging and working through the Supreme Court process, I guess, federal courts. And then I know it's legislation from the General Assembly, and then asking for help with Congress. And so Congress is very much a factor in some of this.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Y'all are asleep.
That's not a bad thing.
I don't see any more questions, and you were just appointed head of, tell us that background, if you will, for a second.
Oh, my history?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this will really put you all to sleep. So. I've been in the state since 1989. Worked with the Georgia State Financing Investment Commission for about 10 years. Ventured out into the private sector, and then ended up back at the World Congress Center. So my background has really been construction and finance. And then did a short stint at back at GSFIC, then went over to the Department of Transportation briefly. Was actually up at Lake Lanier Islands for a short period of time, and then was at the governor's office under Governor Perdue for about a year and a half, and then I ended up at GIFA. So I can't hold a job for some reason, but I keep landing here. So that's really kind of in a nutshell my background. But it is based. I spent a lot of time with the State Finance and Investment Commission dealing with the public debt and bond issuance and construction side. So I think my skill set actually fits pretty well at GIFA.
I do too. Thank you. And our body, the General Assembly, has, through its legislative actions, placed more responsibility now on GIFA for reservoirs than we have in the past. It used to be pretty much tied in with EPD, and we have kind of broken that in two pieces. And so I know that GIFA each year gives us a summary of the inventory of the reservoirs, and you've given that to me so that we can look into that. And if our legislators want to see that, I might ask you if you will just prepare that for us again. Not looking for color, just we're looking for just copy paper, what that inventory is, because I think that helps you see in your different parts of the state. But thank you very much. And as the session wears on, I'm sure there'll be lots more questions, and I know you'll be available to us if you can give us contact information too. Okay.
We'll gladly do that.
Thank you very much. So much. And some just housekeeping messages for our committee. If there's a form in your folder for contact information, if you have more specific information for our office to reach you, if you'll fill that out. If you will check the bulletin board outside our office for the latest information, and then we go through the process of letting you know at your desk in the chamber and at your offices of any information we have. And we intend to continue these educational type processes before our legislation works its way through. But Director Clark, thank you very much, and to Greg Mason and Kevin Kelly, thank you.
Thank you
very much.
We appreciate it.
We're adjourned.